Good day, welcome back to BibleRush. The Tower of Babel, a biblical story and its relevance today. The Tower of Babel is one of the most famous narratives in the Bible, found in Genesis 11, 1-9. It is a story about the origins of language and the scattering of humanity across the earth, and it carries with it profound lessons about pride, human ambition, and divine intervention. While the story is ancient, its themes resonate strongly in today's world, offering insights into human nature, societal unity, and the potential consequences of unchecked power and arrogance. In this text, we will explore the Tower of Babel narrative in its historical and theological context, analyze its themes, and then explore its relevance to contemporary issues, such as the pursuit of unity at the cost of diversity, the dangers of overreaching ambition, and the role of divine influence in a fractured world. The biblical account of the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel story occurs after the Great Flood, during a time when the earth was repopulated by Noah's descendants. Genesis 11, 1-9 reads, "Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, 'Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly.' They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth.' But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the people were building. The Lord said, 'If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other.' So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth." Genesis 11, 1-9 NIV. In this passage, the people of the earth, united by a single language, come together to build a great tower in the land of Shinar, modern-day southern Mesopotamia. They aim to construct a tower that reaches the heavens, a symbol of their collective ambition and desire for recognition. However, the Lord intervenes, deciding to confuse their language, causing disarray among the builders and ultimately scattering them across the earth. Theological significance of the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel story is rich in theological and moral themes. One of the central themes is the idea of human pride and the limits of human ambition. The people of Babel sought to build a tower that reached the heavens, an attempt to elevate themselves to the level of the divine. This was not merely an architectural feat. It was an act of defiance against the natural order established by God. They wanted to make a name for themselves, seeking glory and fame rather than acknowledging the sovereignty of God. This reflects a common human temptation to overstep boundaries and to challenge God's authority. Another theme is the concept of divine intervention. The story emphasizes that no matter how ambitious or powerful human beings may become, they are ultimately subject to God's will. God's decision to confuse their language and scatter them demonstrates his power over human affairs. It also shows that God is not indifferent to human pride and arrogance. His intervention was not simply punitive, but also a way to prevent the destructive consequences of unchecked unity and ambition. If the people had succeeded in their endeavor, their collective power could have led to even greater hubris and possibly the disregard for God's role in their lives. Additionally, the story of Babel introduces the notion of linguistic and cultural diversity. Before the tower was built, all people shared a common language. However, after the tower was abandoned, the people were scattered, and different languages emerged. This linguistic diversity, according to the Bible, is a direct result of divine action. Rather than seeing language diversity as a natural or neutral development, the story suggests that it is a divine response to human overreach. It's a reminder that diversity, especially linguistic and cultural differences, is a part of God's design for humanity. themes of pride and human ambition. At the heart of the Tower of Babel story is the theme of human pride. The builders sought to make a name for themselves, and in doing so, they demonstrated a desire for self-exaltation. Their ambition was to reach the heavens, symbolizing a desire to transcend their earthly limitations and become like God. This mirrors the biblical story of Adam and Eve, where the temptation in the Garden of Eden was to gain knowledge and power equal to God's, Genesis 3:5. Pride is a recurring theme throughout the Bible, and it is often depicted as a fundamental flaw in human nature. In the New Testament, for instance, Jesus warns against seeking glory and recognition from others, Matthew 23:12. The Apostle Paul also addresses the dangers of pride, particularly in his letters to the early Christian communities. In 1 Corinthians 1:27-29, Paul writes, "But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong." In today's world, the quest for power, fame, and recognition is still prevalent. People continue to seek to elevate themselves, whether through career success, social media presence, or even political power. The Tower of Babel serves as a cautionary tale, warning us that unchecked ambition can lead to division, confusion, and ultimately, failure. The desire to make a name for oneself can have far-reaching consequences, not just for the individual but for society as a whole. The building of the tower was not simply a personal goal, but a collective effort, and its downfall caused a scattering that disrupted the entire human community. Unity versus diversity. The Tower of Babel also raises important questions about the tension between unity and diversity. The people of Babel sought unity in language and purpose, believing that their collective efforts would allow them to achieve greatness. In their eyes, the tower would symbolize their unity and strength. However, this pursuit of unity, without regard for divine authority, led to the creation of divisions, as their languages were confused and they were scattered across the earth. In modern society, unity is often seen as a desirable goal. Nations, organizations, and even social movements seek unity for strength and progress. However, there is also a growing recognition of the importance of diversity in building vibrant, healthy communities. Unity for the sake of unity can sometimes result in the suppression of diversity, whether in the form of language, culture, or individual identity. The story of Babel reminds us that diversity is not a flaw, but a divinely orchestrated part of the human experience. Today, as the world becomes increasingly globalized, the question of how to balance unity and diversity is more relevant than ever. The challenge lies in how to foster unity without sacrificing the richness that comes from diverse cultures, perspectives, and experiences. The Tower of Babel teaches us that forced unity, especially when driven by human pride and ambition, can be destructive. True unity comes when there is respect for differences and an acknowledgement of the diversity that exists within the human family. The dangers of overreaching ambition. The story of Babel also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overreaching ambition. The people's goal to build a tower that reached to the heavens was an attempt to surpass their limitations and control the world around them. This overreaching ambition is a common theme throughout history, where individuals, groups, or nations attempt to achieve goals that go beyond their capabilities or moral boundaries. Whether in the realm of politics, business, or technology, human history is filled with examples of individuals or societies that sought power or success without regard for the consequences. In the modern era, we see this ambition manifest in the pursuit of technological advancement, environmental exploitation, and unchecked economic growth. The rapid development of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and other technologies raises ethical questions about the potential consequences of overreaching ambition. Just as the builders of the Tower of Babel sought to elevate themselves without regard for the larger picture, modern society often prioritizes progress and innovation without fully considering the potential risks or moral implications. The collapse of the Tower of Babel serves as a warning against the dangers of unchecked ambition. The lesson is not that ambition is inherently bad, but that it must be guided by wisdom, humility, and an understanding of one's place in the grand scheme of things. Ambition that seeks to defy natural and divine limits inevitably leads to failure and destruction. Conclusion: the story of the Tower of Babel is more than just an ancient myth about the origins of language. It is a profound reflection on the human condition and the dangers of pride, ambition, and a desire for control. Its themes of unity, diversity, and divine intervention continue to speak to us today, offering timeless lessons about the limits of human power and the need for humility. In our modern world, the story of Babel challenges us to reflect on our pursuit of unity and success, urging us to consider the costs of ambition and the importance of respecting diversity. It reminds us that human strength and achievement, while admirable, must always be tempered with humility and a recognition of the divine order. The Tower of Babel is not just a story about the past. It is a story that speaks to the present and offers wisdom for the future.